Language is a human universal. Every people, every culture has developed its own language. In fact, there are over 6,000 languages in use today, and historically, there have been many, many more. But written language, the written word, was not developed everywhere independently. While there are thousands of spoken languages, there are only a few hundred writing systems, and only a handful of those writing systems are widely and/or often used. The most widespread of these systems is the Latin alphabet. It's seen throughout Western Europe, the Americas, Australia, Southern Africa, Turkey, and more. It is also the base of our own English alphabet. But where did the alphabet come from? How has it changed over time? And why is it so widespread today? Our story starts with one of the oldest civilizations in the world, Egypt. Egypt had a complicated and sophisticated system of writing that we now know as hieroglyphics. Hieroglyphs were pictograms, small drawings that represent objects, animals, and concepts. This type of writing system is called a logographic system. So how did this complicated system of over 700 pictograms condense into the alphabet we know today? Well, it took a lot of time. In around the 16th or 17th century BC, Egypt had grown its empire far outside the River Nile, and into Libya, down to Ethiopia, and most importantly for our story, up into Asia, specifically to the land of Canaan. The local Canaanites would not normally have been taught the full Egyptian script, which was mostly used by priests and scribes. That being said, some Canaanites, somehow or another, were able to take many of the hieroglyphs and fit them into their own language. They took some of the common characters, simplified them, and gave them each a sound. The sounds corresponded to the pictograms based on their meaning. For example, the character per, which in hieroglyphics meant house, was given the sound b for the Canaanite word for house, baitu. This alphabet has now come to be known as the proto-sinaitic alphabet, named for the Sinai Peninsula, where many of the surviving records of the script have been found. Once the Egyptian Empire receded in the 12th century BC, the Canaanites, or by this point more commonly called Phoenicians, quickly became the most dominant trading power in the Mediterranean. They built an extensive maritime network from North Africa, Egypt, Italy, and most importantly for our story, Greece. By this point, the proto-sinaitic alphabet evolved into the Phoenician alphabet. It greatly simplified the pictograms used by the Egyptians into almost completely abstract symbols, a few of which you may recognize. The Phoenician trading network transferred many things, both material and immaterial, around the Mediterranean. One such thing was their alphabet. The Phoenician alphabet was copied by many groups of people: the Arameans in Syria, the Hebrews in Palestine, and the Greeks in Greece. According to the Greek historian Herodotus, the alphabet was brought to Greece by a Phoenician prince named Cadmos. He was also an important Greek hero, of the likes of Heracles and Perseus. He was certainly a legendary figure, though, and not a historical one. As you can see, the archaic Greek alphabet is quite similar to the Phoenician one, but the letters have evolved, and a few more were added. The most important innovation the Greeks made was the addition of vowels. You see, the previous alphabets were not true alphabets, but abjads. Abjads are writing systems similar to alphabets in that each letter represents one sound, but an abjad does not include vowels. Instead, the vowels are implied through context. Modern abjads include Hebrew and Arabic. The Greeks took letters in the Phoenician alphabet that they had no use for, and substituted them for vowel sounds. For example, the letter Aleph, which represented a glottal stop, a sound not used in Greek, became alpha, which made the ah sound. The archaic Greek alphabet had two main variants, an Eastern variant and a Western one. The Eastern script was used in Athens, and it evolved into the modern Greek alphabet, as well as the Cyrillic alphabet used in much of Eastern Europe. The Western Greek alphabet was used in the Western Greek colonies. You see, in the 8th century BC, some of the Greek city-states, learning from their Phoenician neighbors, created colonies throughout the Mediterranean. The Euboeans, who used the Western alphabet, created colonies in southern Italy, and this is where the Greek alphabet was spread to the Etruscans. The Etruscans were the dominant Italian civilization before the rise of Rome. Their alphabet was very similar to the Western Greek, but they dropped some of the letters they had no use for. By the 7th century BC, the Romans had interacted with the Etruscans enough that they adopted their alphabet. Over time, it became the Latin alphabet that we know and love. As you can see, they added the letters Y and Z to the end. This happened around the time Alexander the Great was conquering the Persian Empire. Yep, the Romans were around at the same time as Alexander. History overlaps itself sometimes. The final form of the Latin alphabet was formalized during the Roman Empire. The Roman language, Latin, was spread throughout Western Europe. Eventually, even areas where Latin wasn't spoken, like the German lands, Scandinavia, and the British Isles, adopted their script, replacing their previous runic alphabets. The Anglo-Saxons adopted the Latin alphabet for Old English around the time they were Christianized. The English alphabet actually has its own history. As you can see, the Latin alphabet doesn't include everything we do. For one, it's all capital letters, as Romans didn't have a use for lowercase. Also, the letters J, U, and W are all missing. This separate history will have to wait for another time, however. In the 17th and 18th centuries, many of the European powers started exploring, and eventually colonized much of the world. These new empires spread their languages and cultures to far-off places. In the Americas, the most widely spoken languages are all Western European. In Africa, English and French are very widely spoken, and so on and so forth. With this language spread, the Latin alphabet, of course, spread as well. Even many non-European languages now use the Latin alphabet, like Swahili in East Africa and Tagalog in the Philippines. Even in countries where the Latin alphabet isn't used, school children will often be taught the alphabet because of how widespread it is. So that's the history of the Latin alphabet. In a later video, I plan to explore the ways the English alphabet evolved after the Latin script was brought to English shores. But until then, thank you so much for watching. Please leave the video a like, share it with a friend, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the bell icon to be notified whenever I upload a new video. Bye!